relevant. But negation is a form of power and control because it establishes the rational framework. And once you are within this rational framework, the first rule of politics, do you know what is it? The one where they discussed how change happens, is another first rule of politics. But the first rule of politics is there are leaders and they are led. And if you don't understand that, you are not yet thinking politically. There are leaders and they are led. And the negation, the negative move, puts you immediately into this framework, leaders and led. Can it be otherwise? Can there be politics that is not based on leaders and led? That's a very important question. That remains to be seen. Can we carry on?
But it was, is that right?
Yeah.
But it was also no less the case that the Hegelian dialectic, and particularly the way in which concept itself had been formulated, was and remains to this day a tough act to beat. For to rid philosophy of the metaphysical seemed to imply a good riddance to some of its more eloquent fares. Plurality, surface synthesis, movement, the instant, not to mention pure immanence, and with it the possibility of destroying the otherwise inventive categories of, say, becoming woman, or becoming animal, or becoming sunflower, or becoming ear, and etc.
Thank you. In other words, or to say the same things differently, why are we doing this exercise? Why am I making you read this and then describe it, or talk about it, or say something about it? Why are we doing this? Okay.
Put her words into our own words.
No, not so much. Not so much. No. Well, maybe that also happens, but that's not the point. Sooner or later, you're going to write your research paper. Yeah. What does it mean to research anything? So, to research means precisely that: to collect some quotations, materials, to read them, and to say something about them. That's research. Research is not writing down what we think. Yeah? Research is showing how you work with sources. What sources? It's entirely up to you. You don't have to ever use Golding as a source. But whatever source you're going to use, whether it is an artwork or an image or a poem or an essay or a book, whatever, you will have to get hold of some of its elements and somehow engage with them. One of the ways you can engage with them is discuss them in relation to your practice. As opposite, as supporting, as adding, whatever, it doesn't really matter. It's not all about saying, look how great I am, because Spinoza seems to be in agreement with me. It's more about showing how you can assemble a kind of tapestry and link different things through your own thinking. So your originality is in the materials you bring to the table and in the connections you identify between them. And you can identify whatever connections you like. It's entirely up to you. That's why academic writing is, in a sense, incredibly open to innovation. And you have to adhere to a certain framework of reference, but within what you do is completely open. This is not just idle talk, because very soon we're going to start thinking about your research paper. Yeah, actually, you can start thinking about it already. So this is, this is the question. What does it actually say? Hegelian dialectic, and particularly the way in which concept itself has been formulated, was and remains to this day a tough act to beat. What does it say, this sentence? How do you understand this?
Saying the Hegelian argument is basically really useful and works, and it's really hard to break, to get away from it.
That's right. Yeah, and what makes it so good? Why is it hard to break away from it?
It's common sense.
That's a very nice one, but that's not all. Why else it's hard to break away from it?
It's simple and
It's not that it's simple and
I mean, like maybe just eloquent, or it has a certain balance or harmony, and these guys kind of
it's a very, very hard thing to get away from, because
It's ingrained within our society.
it's not, well, you can say it's ingrained in society, but that wouldn't be so bad. The worst thing is that it is ingrained within our thinking. We think, usually, dialectically, with negation and identity are the main tools of our everyday thought. To overcome this requires a particularly trained or somehow particular determination, and you need to be prepared to do various really difficult and dangerous acrobatics just to get out of this Hegelian framework. It is based on the concept. What is the concept? Well, negation is the concept, the idea, the logic. How do you get out of reason? Well, it's difficult because you might need reason in order to get out of it. Even just this move away from Hegel risks re-establishing the very negation you are trying to rid yourself from, because how are you going to get out of Hegel? Well, you're going to negate him, aren't you? By negating him, you already brought him back. So there has to be a kind of another way. If there isn't, maybe it's impossible. Maybe when everything else is considered, we are doomed to forever remain Hegelians. Maybe, white supremacists are right, Perhaps there is a hierarchy. Perhaps there is that leaders and led, and everyone needs to know their place. So there are consequences to accepting this Hegelian model for what it is. And for that reason, these efforts to try to get out of this Hegelian model, to me, seem justified. For some people, they seem completely frivolous. And they kind of say, well, what they are doing, they want to they want to win not by playing the game better, they want to win by inventing their own game. You could say various things, but what I think is quite interesting is that it seems that there are good reasons to somehow find a way of stepping out of this Hegelian moment, not least because of technology. So how these things connect? Can you do the next sentence?
4. To rid philosophy of the metaphysical is seen to imply a good riddance to some of its more eloquent fares. Plurality, surface synthesis, movement, the instant, not to mention pure immanence, and with it the possibility of destroying the otherwise invented categories of, say, becoming woman, or becoming animal, or becoming sunflower, or becoming ear, etc.
Yeah,
It often seemed, and in some quarters still does, that the price of fighting to create a wholly different set of anti-Oedipal identities, and with it a wholly new set of social orders, might just be worth the price of enduring, just for a moment or two, all the rotting bad smells of a Hegelian identikit corpse.
Good, thank you. So the question is, how do we get out of this Hegelian way of thinking, but without losing some of the more interesting fruit of metaphysical thought and of dialectics? Now, can we skip a little bit and let's read it from here. In its most simple form.
At its most simple form, a boreal philosophy could be understood in this manner. Take as a given a seed, say for example an acorn. Now, no matter what one does, assuming it is gardened properly and not settled out or mashed, it will only ever unfold, manifest itself as an oak tree.
Do you remember how this way of thinking is called? Starting with T? Good, teleology, that's right, telos. What telos means in Greek?
Target.
Target, that's right, yes. So the end justifies the means, or the end justifies the starting point, the whole connected in one system. Yeah, okay, carry on.
The tree is thus the goal to which all little acorn seeds aspire. This aspiration, as it were, is continuous, linear, even if the path appears convoluted, spiraled, hysterical, nasty, or relaxed. This is because all change, no matter how often or in what manner it occurs, does so in relation to an always already unfolding trajectory of that growth. The oak, as the outcome of the acorn, names thus the very purpose, ground, of the said seed. It is only the elemental processes to which that seed might be subjected, say wind, sun, rain, unemployment, bullying, etc., that determines how the oak might turn out, big, small, gnarly, demented, covered in lawsuits. Thus is revealed the true purpose of one's being, or, as eugenics might proclaim, it's all already coded in one's basic DNA.
Okay, thank you very much. Not an easy text to read. What does it say?
Well, this is kind of like what we had last week, where you can't escape from your kind of destiny, and it's fine unless you're a slave or something.
Yeah. What is there another way to describe, or another way to relate? How would you relate what we just read here in this paragraph to some form of practice, to some form of art practice?
Well, a picture is kind of just defined by one purpose, to look like Delft or...
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. But this one purpose might be resemblance. It also might be to be an investment vehicle. It also it doesn't really matter. The whole point is that whatever it is, there is a logical connection between the beginning and the end. Yeah, and that precludes what?
Any desire for that thing to change? Or?
Exactly, it precludes change. It's not that there is no change. In this model, the teleological model, of course there is a change. You start from the acorn, you end up with a big massive tree. It's not the same thing. There is change there. But this change is managed. It is, it can only develop in one direction. Yeah, the acorn, the tree will never go back to become an acorn. Yeah? And the acorn will never just become a pear tree. However, with genetic programming, it is possible. Yeah? It is possible to start with one species and end up with another. I read that there will be soon mammoth. You know, this sort of woolly mammoth. So they're going to bring them back. And
Mental. You can't even look after the elephants we've already got.
so it's interesting, isn't it? Even this notion that the acorn can only become an oak tree, even that now is not dead certain. It's possible to offer it another avenue of growth. So how then this technological moment that allows us to change the destiny of the acorn, how this technological moment comes back and informs the way we think about being.
Well, it shows, I suppose, everything is like this immanence, everything's made of the same thing, so therefore you can make anything into anything.
How then this understanding informs the way you work?
Well, we don't, if you use paint, we don't have to make a painting.
It's good, yeah. It's something like that. I don't know if there are any definite answers, but it seems to me that there is a certain mileage here in looking at what is happening now in biology, in astrophysics, in genetics, and what it actually says about art. Because as we said earlier, art essentially uses the same processes they use every day, just in a different way. Yeah. But that's also why, you see, art is essential to figuring out what is actually going on. You know, it's not. Very famously, several years ago, the government decided that they're only going to invest in STEM subjects. Do you know what STEM subjects are? Science, technology, engineering, and math. Yeah. Science, technology, engineering, math. These were basically they are saying, like Foucault, these are the terms of the conversation we want to have. You know, these are the key elements. Art is kind of left out of this. What we're saying is that art is integral in this mix, because without art we will not be able to figure out the other four.
You want steam, not stem.
Exactly. We want steam, not stem. Yes. Good. Now let's keep without the three. So the question is, what is left out of the Hegelian model? Yeah. If we come to Hegel and say, look, your dialectical model that is based on negation, while it is universal in its reach, it still leaves something out. Yeah? The problem with this is that how do you access? Hegel invented this model that is so devilishly clever. How are you going to talk about something which is outside of the system if your own thought belongs to the system? So you get them to think, or at least to imagine, the outside of thought. Yeah? Thought also has an outside. So there are some things which are yet unthought. Yeah? Like these white spots on the map, or black spots, I don't know. These undiscovered territories. That is undiscovered territories of thought, which we find very hard to reach because we cannot reach them via thought. We need another vehicle. So if we cannot think something, how else we can access it? Sorry? Yes. Feelings, did you say? Yeah. If we cannot think something, perhaps we can feel it.
At the time that you are feeling, you are thinking. In some way.
In some way, yes, but it's not the same thing. Is feeling and thinking the same thing?
No.
People always use it.
Well, Deleuze has this statement about it, which let me find it. I thought that
Actually, the feeling is stronger than the thought.
I think you feel it first, then you realize that you feel it, then you go to the thinking.
But what do you mean with feel? Like I feel this with my body or feel about emotions?
The emotions.
Do
You
you?
enter the emotion first.
Okay. What did you say about that? I'm sorry. What did you say about that different sentence that you said? Repeat what you said.
Yeah. You enter the emotion first, then you realize that you are in the emotion. That's the thing.
Actually, you would not realize that you are feeling emotions.
Yes.
so.
Come.
What I think is important is that Deleuze is saying, I cannot find the quotation now, but he says something along the lines. Something in the world forces us to think. But what forces us to think is an encounter. The encounter can be with a statue, with a person, with a devil, with a ghost, it doesn't matter. But the encounter forces us to think. First, what comes first is the sensation. You walk down the street and you bang your hand against the lamppost. There's a sensation. The thought comes later. Yeah? So thought is caused by sensation. Deleuze here very much is following the thought of David Hume, the wonderful Scottish philosopher, who has a treatise on human understanding, where very similar ideas are explored. So, how do we get to the outside of thought? Someone else will read and we give Luke a rest. So could someone read to us the A side, the B side? Anyone? Anyone?
Nobody else that can read.
You will read? Thank you.
A side, the B side. Learning how to listen. Attunement as the task of art. But to give the outside of thought a kind of coherence so that it, too, would not be in debt to the arboreal authority voice of its makers, required yet another subtle move. Speaking as they often did with a single tongue, Deleuze and Guattari thus dined out in several parallel universes at the same time. Pocketing ingredients from around the philosophical galaxy, from the worlds of expressionism, Spinoza, pure immanence, artifice, and a-radical genealogies, Hume, Nietzsche, folds and monadology, Leibniz, élan vital, simultaneity and duration, Bergson, pattern, difference, repetition, and time, Heidegger, sense and sensation, the Stoics, Lewis Carroll, Bacon, and the cartographically discursive, diagrammatically challenged regimes of power, ethics, aesthetics, and existence, Foucault, they began to build their counter-transimmanent logic. Long spoons were at the ready. The dangers lurked at every turn at this oddly bacchanalian banquet. Mix-matching such a heady crowd whose epistemological, not to mention political allegiances were often suspect, or at best complicated. The seating arrangements themselves must have given grave cause for alarm.
So what did you hear in this section?
Instead of using one type of philosophy, Deleuze and Guattari sort of borrowed or incorporated various different elements to produce a new type of logic.
And what this method is? What is the method they are using here? Good. That's right. Yeah, a rhizome, basically. They construct their philosophy as a rhizome by picking, and it's like this candy shop with the different drawers for different candy, just picking from different places, not according to color, not according to flavor, not according to vertical or horizontal lines, just picking, you know, but not at random. Not at random, you know. It is specifically, and what these people, Spinoza, Hume, Nietzsche, Leibniz, Bergson, Heidegger, the Stoics, Lewis Carroll, Francis Bacon, what they have in common. They are completely different, and yet they have something in common. What they have in common is that maybe they are kind of, on some level, countercultural. On some level, there is something running through these thinkers, these artists, these provocateurs, that seems to be seeking in different ways to kind of evade the linear, rational, logical, idealistic discourse. Yeah, the list doesn't have to stop here. You could also include things like the tarot cards, for instance, or forms of mysticism, or forms of Zen. It's a broad kind of territory from which one can pick and mix. The point is to find alliances, you know, to basically form a community with people with whom you have some affinity. Yeah, so that is exactly research, you know. How do they know to go to all these people? Well, that's their research, you know. They go and they take something from Spinoza. Spinoza is also a rationalist. Do they take Spinoza's rationalism from him? No. They seek in Spinoza some moments that help them to undermine reason. Spinoza, on one hand, has this beautiful move to say God is everything, and as a way to establish his atheism. But he also has the other very famous statements. For instance, he says, nothing in life is to be feared or laughed at. Everything is just to be understood. Now that sounds incredibly logical and rational, almost like Cartesian. Yeah? Because how do you understand? Reason, logic. So we go back to this sort of... So that's not what they take from Spinoza. They don't take this state. You know, they take the other ones. So that is a way of doing research. That is a way you can construct your own research by lying down your friends and allies and fellow travelers and sympathizers, and they can come from wherever you like. They don't have to come from philosophy. That can be science fiction, for instance, it can be in music, it can be in food, it can be in fashion. It doesn't really matter where they come from, but you look for things that where you feel there is a kind of like-minded move happening. So, for instance, recently, there was a fashion show in Paris about 6 months ago, when I forgot now who was the designer, but there were these models walking down the catwalk with these DHL t-shirts. Did you see this? Yeah. These DHL t-shirts. Now, I thought that this was absolutely fantastic, so brilliant, and if I was writing a paper, I would take that as a gesture that I find interesting. You know, not the whole of the show, not the whole of the catwalk, not the whole of someone's output, but just this thing. Yeah, that's research. It's just about, it's like building a mood board, as designers call it. Okay. So, I mean, because he mentions here Lewis Carroll, which is Alice in Wonderland, what we spoke about earlier, and Bacon. Let's just have a quick look at Bacon, so you get a sense. So, what can we take from? So, what can we take from Francis Bacon? Why Bacon? Do you know? Are you familiar?
You mean the philosopher?
No, well, it's a good question. I think